You ever had someone look you dead in the eye, say something that revealed exactly who they were, and then act surprised when you believed them? Yeah, that happened to me. And the crazy part is, it happened over breakfast, on a Sunday, while I was just trying to drink my coffee in peace. I'm John, 29, software engineer. I'm the kind of guy who fixes problems quietly, doesn't make scenes, and generally gives people more chances than they probably deserve. I'm telling you that up front because what I did next is going to seem out of character for someone like me. And I want you to understand that when I finally moved, I moved because I had no doubt left in my body whatsoever. Arena was 27 when this went down. She was in marketing, which in hindsight explains a lot. Sharp, confident, the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately understood its social geometry, who had power, who wanted it, who was pretending. She was genuinely brilliant at reading people. The problem, I'd eventually learn, was that she mostly used that skill to figure out how far she could push them. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party about 3 years before all this happened. She had this energy that was hard to look away from. We talked for 2 hours that night, and I drove home thinking about her the whole way. We dated for 2 years, and for most of that time things were good. Not perfect, but good. There were small things I filed away. Moments where she'd talk over me at dinner with friends and then squeeze my hand like we were a team. Comments about my career pace that were framed as encouragement but landed differently. A habit of reframing situations so that she was always a central character. But I told myself that was just how she was wired. Ambitious people have edges. Then I proposed. I did it at her parents' house because she'd mentioned once, early on, that she always imagined having her family around for that moment. Her mom cried. Her dad shook my hand like he was trying to test the structural integrity of my fingers. It felt right. It felt real. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at our kitchen table on a Sunday morning with a cup of coffee and my phone, half paying attention to the news, and Arena was across from me working on her professional rebrand. New portfolio, updated LinkedIn, the whole thing. She'd been talking about it for weeks. I was used to the background noise of it. Then she said, without looking up, "I'm thinking about adopting Daniel's last name professionally." I lowered my phone. "Who's Daniel?" "My ex." Still not looking up. "Your ex's last name?" I said slowly. "Castellano." Now she looked up, and her expression was completely calm, businesslike. Arena Castellano sounds more successful than Arena Miller. John. Think about it. Which name do you remember? I want to be really precise about what happened to my body in that moment. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even hurt, exactly. It was clarity. The cold, clean kind that shows up when something you've been half-sensing for a long time suddenly has a shape you can see all the way around. I said, "We're engaged." "I know that." "You're engaged to me, and you want to professionally brand yourself with your ex-boyfriend's last name." She set the laptop down slightly. "This is a career decision. It has nothing to do with us. You of all people should understand how branding works." And that's what did it. Not the idea itself, as wild as it already was. It was the you of all people. The way she framed it, like I was being professionally unsophisticated. Like the correct response from a supportive partner was to nod and say, "Good thinking, babe. Branding is important," I said. She smiled. "Exactly. That's why I'm ending the engagement." The smile left her face so fast, it was almost like watching a video glitch. "What did you say?" "You just told me," clearly where I rank. "I believe you." She started talking fast. Something about how I was misreading it, how I was being emotional, how this was a professional conversation. and not a personal one. I got up, went to the bedroom, grabbed the overnight bag I kept packed for work trips, and walked out. She called 4 times before I made it to my car. I didn't answer once. I want to say something here because I know how this sounds. Leaving an engagement over a conversation about a name sounds, on paper, like an overreaction. But here's the thing about 2 years of small moments. They accumulate. What she said that morning wasn't the cause. It was the confirmation. It told me everything I needed to know about how she saw me, how she saw us, and what the next 40 years would look like if I stayed. When clarity arrives at completely, ignoring it is the actual mistake. I went and stayed with my buddy Marcus. He's one of those people who listens all the way through before he says anything, which is exactly what I needed. When I finished, he sat there for a second and then said, "So she wants to professionally become her ex's wife while she's actually your fiancée." "Yeah," I said, "that's about right. You did the right thing." Over the next week, Arena ran what I can only describe as a full campaign. It started with the text, long, detailed, the kind that always opened with, "I didn't mean it the way it came out." I'd gotten versions of those texts before about smaller things. The pattern was always the same. The apology wasn't about what she'd done. It was about reversing the consequence. When the text didn't work, her mom called. I want to be honest, those calls are the hardest because I genuinely liked her mom. She told me Arena wasn't sleeping, that she was devastated. I told her I was sorry and that I cared about their family, but that I needed to stay with my decision. Her mom said, "She's always been difficult, John, but she loves you." I believed every word of that, both parts. Then came the mutual friends. One by one, like she'd made a list and was working through it. Jake called saying I was overreacting. Sarah texted saying Arena had said something dumb and was embarrassed. Even my co-worker Devin, who barely knew Arena, somehow got looped in. That last one was what told me this wasn't organic. Arena was working her network systematically, controlling the narrative before I could establish mine. Here's what none of those people knew. And this is the part where the story gets more complicated. Rhea is Arena's cousin. She's 26, works as a landscape architect, and has a kind of quiet perceptiveness that comes from spending years watching people up close. We'd known each other for about 2 years through Arena, family dinners, holidays, occasional group stuff. We always had easy conversations, the kind that don't require any maintenance. I'd never thought about it as anything other than that. About a week after the breakup, Rhea texted me, not to change my mind, not to report back to Arena, just to ask if I was okay. I heard what happened. I'm not calling to talk you out of it or back into it, just checking on you. I stared at that text for probably 5 minutes. In the middle of a week where everyone who contacted me had an agenda, someone had reached out with none. We got coffee 2 days later. She told me, without me asking, that she watched Arena go through relationships that followed a recognizable pattern. Idealization first, then slow erosion, then a reset when the other person finally pushed back. She said she'd never said anything because Arena was family and she hadn't felt it was her place. "Why are you telling me now?" I asked, "Because now you're not her fiancé, so it's less loaded." We talked for 3 hours, not about Arena, about her work, my work, a hiking trail she'd been planning to do, a documentary series I was in the middle of. When we said goodbye in the parking lot, she said, "I hope you're doing okay, John, for real." And there was nothing attached to it, no angle, no ask. I drove home, and I thought about that the whole way. Rhea and I didn't rush into anything. It was about 6 weeks after the breakup when we actually had the honest conversation about what we were both feeling and whether it was real or just a strange situation pulling us together. We agreed to take it slow and find out carefully. About 2 weeks into that, Arena found out. I never confirmed who told her. My best guess is she'd been watching Ria's social media closely enough that certain absences told a story. Either way, she called me on a Tuesday night at 9, and I answered because the way she called made me think something was actually wrong. "You're seeing Ria?" "Not a question. Flat and exact." "That's not a question," I said. "She is my cousin." "I know that. You're doing this to hurt me." She said it with total certainty, like she'd already written the story and was reading it back to me. "Arena, I ended things because of what you said in that kitchen. Ria has nothing to do with why I left. She has always been jealous of me. This is her getting what she wanted." And right there was a thing I'd seen in smaller form for 2 years, fully exposed. Nothing could just be what it was. Everything had to be rerouted back through Arena. Ria wasn't someone I connected with genuinely. She was a rival who'd used me as a chess piece. I was not a person making a decision. I was a tool in someone else's plan against her. "I hope you build something good," I said. "I mean that, but we're done talking." I hung up. What came after that was not a woman grieving a relationship. It was a woman running a damage control operation. She worked the family first. At a cousin's birthday gathering that I obviously wasn't at, she told the story in a way that made her the victim of 2 betrayals at once: the fiancé who abandoned her and the cousin who'd been plotting against her. Several family members called Ria to express how disappointed they were. One of her aunts stopped talking to her completely. Then Arena moved to my professional network. She and I had attended a few industry events together over 2 years, so she knew some people peripherally. She was smart about it. She never said anything explicit. She'd comment on my LinkedIn posts in ways that felt loaded, mention to mutual contacts that the breakup had been confusing and painful, and leave just enough ambiguity for people to fill in their own unflattering conclusions. She was doing what she was trained to do. She was marketing a narrative. Then she escalated past anything I expected. About 2 months after our last phone call, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It had screenshots attached. Screenshots of what appeared to be a text conversation between me and Arena, where I had said some genuinely ugly things. Cruel things about her family, her work, her. Things I had never said or thought, because I hadn't. Not a single word of it. I sent the screenshots to Marcus immediately. He looked at them for a few minutes and came back with, "These are fabricated. The timestamp format is wrong. And your contact name has a capital M in the wrong place, like someone typed it manually instead of it pulling from a real contact." Someone had built a fake conversation and was circulating it. I don't know exactly who made them. I'm not going to say it was Arena directly, but it was someone close enough to her to have motivation and close enough to me to know what a conversation between us might plausibly look like. I called my sister Claire that same night. Claire is a contract attorney, but she understood enough about defamation to walk me through what I was looking at. She said that fabricated screenshots being circulated to damage someone's reputation, especially when they reach professional network, could qualify as defamation. She said we could send a cease and desist immediately, and that if it continued after that, we'd have grounds to file a civil suit. I told her I wanted to be precise and careful. I didn't want to escalate more than necessary. She said, "John, she already escalated. You're just deciding whether to respond." We sent a cease and desist through Claire's firm in mid-November, about 10 weeks after the breakup. It identified the specific screenshots, laid out the evidence of fabrication, named the legal exposure clearly, and made it plain that further distribution of false information would result in a defamation lawsuit. The anonymous text stopped the next day, but Irina still wasn't finished. She called Rhea directly, framing it as one to talk family to family. Rhea agreed to the call because Rhea is the kind of person who doesn't avoid hard things. On that call, Irina told her that I had a long history of emotional unavailability, that I had made Irina feel small for years, that Rhea was walking into something she didn't fully understand yet. Rhea listened to the whole thing without interrupting. Then she said, "Irina, I've been watching you for 6 years. I know what your patterns look like." Irina hung up. Rhea told me about it that same evening over dinner. She wasn't upset or second-guessing anything. She was just clear about what had happened, the way she always was. "She's trying to create doubt," Rhea said. "She needs at least one of us to be shaky." I asked her straight out, "Are you?" She looked at me the way she does when she's being completely honest. "No." Then the thing happened that finished it. Not something I did. Not something Rhea did. Something Irina did completely on her own because she couldn't stop herself. In January, about 4 months after I ended the engagement, Irina launched her full professional rebrand publicly. New website, new portfolio, social media presence updated everywhere. And there it was, exactly like she'd announced over breakfast that Sunday morning. Irina Castellano, across everything. Her ex-boyfriend's last name, used as her professional identity, displayed on a public-facing business website. Daniel Castellano, the actual Daniel Castellano, was by this point engaged to a woman named Melissa and living in Phoenix. He had no idea any of this was happening. Melissa found it. I don't know the exact sequence, but from what reached me through Rhea, who heard from her mom, who heard from Irina's mom, Melissa found the website, recognized the name, brought it to Daniel, and things got uncomfortable fast. Daniel reached out to Irina privately and asked her to take his name down. He was reasonable about it, from what I understand. He wasn't trying to make it a thing. He just wanted his name off someone else's professional brand, without his knowledge or consent. Irina ignored him. Daniel talked to an attorney in Arizona, underwrite a publicity law in the United States. Using someone's name for commercial purposes without their consent creates real legal liability. His attorney drafted a formal cease and desist demanding Irina remove the Castellano name from all commercial and professional materials. Irina ignored that too. The case moved to a civil complaint filed in early February, roughly 3 months after her relaunch. Faced with an actual lawsuit, Irina finally took the Castellano branding down. She rebranded again, going back to her real last name. The whole public rebrand lasted about 6 weeks before it collapsed under its own logic. I heard all of this through Rhea, who was getting it from her mom, who was getting it from Irina's mom, who by all accounts was exhausted and mortified. And I want to be honest about what I felt when I heard it. It wasn't gloating, exactly. It was something quieter. The specific, settled feeling you get when someone's choices complete their own arc and you didn't have to do a single thing to make it happen. I'd said branding is important. Turned out I was right in more ways than one. The family situation with Rhea shifted faster than I expected once Irina's behavior became visible enough that people couldn't keep rationalizing it. The cease and desist we'd sent in November had already made some people uncomfortable because it made things concrete in a way that rumors don't. Then the lawsuit over Daniel's name made it worse for her. When your story is that you were the wrong party, it's hard to maintain that story while also being sued by your ex-boyfriend for using his name without permission. Deanne, who'd stopped talking to Rhea, sent her a message in March. It basically said she'd only heard one version of events, and she owed Rhea an apology. The mutual friends who'd been recruited to pressure me went quiet, and then slowly just went back to being normal people I knew. Jake apologized directly and said Arena had framed things in a way that made it sound like I'd done something genuinely bad. I told him I understood, and that was that. Rhea and I have been together for close to a year now. I'm not going to oversell it or wrap it up too cleanly, because that's not how real things work. What I'll say is this. It's the first relationship I've been in where I don't feel like I'm managing something. We talk straight. We disagree without it becoming a negotiation about reality. When things are quiet, it's actually quiet, not the kind of quiet that means something is building. Last month, her mom had us over for dinner. Toward the end of the night, she leaned over to me and said quietly, "She seems like herself." She hasn't seemed like herself in a long time. I just nodded. That felt like enough. Arena relaunched her brand again sometime in the spring, under her actual name this time. She's posting about authenticity and personal growth. She has a newsletter. Her website tagline is something about building something real. I don't follow her. Rhea mentioned it once. We both sat with it for a second, and then Rhea said, well, maybe she means it this time. And we moved on to talking about whether we were doing that hike in September or waiting until October when the trail is less crowded. I keep coming back to that Sunday morning. The kitchen table, the coffee going lukewarm, the glow of her laptop screen. The look on her face when she said his name sounded more successful than mine. The thing that still gets me isn't the audacity of it. It's the calm. She genuinely believed I would absorb it the way I'd absorbed everything else. File it away. Tell myself it was just ambition and keep moving. When I said branding is important, she thought I was agreeing with her. I wasn't. I was naming exactly what I was looking at, and then I was walking away from it. 2 years of small things and one clear morning and a name that wasn't mine, and it was over. Not because I gave up, because I finally saw the whole picture at once. And once you see something that clearly you can't really pretend otherwise without losing something important about yourself. I wasn't willing to lose that. If this story had you nodding along at every turn, hit subscribe, because if you think choosing the right name matters, wait till you see what happens when people choose the wrong everything else.